Welcome everyone. So I am Julien Tribotto. I work as a business consultant at Inuit, doing mainly system administration work. I like open source software, and I am a DevOps believer and evangelist. And I'm using Puppet since 2011. So by the time it was Puppet 2.6, I think, but we are still using Puppet 0.24 at that time. You can find me on IRC, Twitter, and GitHub. So I work at Inuit. So we are a Belgian-based open source company, but we have customers all around Europe, and we do a lot of consultancy and a lot of Puppet jobs also, because Puppet is really the largest tool used in Europe, and that's right what the customers demand. So we are doing a lot of customer Puppet setups, and that means also that we do that in small, large organizations, so in a lot of different environments. But for this talk, let's go back to the basis of the sysadmin work. So when you set up a new service as a sysadmin, you do three different things. First, you need to pick up the package, then you will tweak the configuration, and then you will start a daemon, if it's a daemon. And that pattern, you will find that in a lot of different services, HTTPD, NPD, but also MySQL. So the three different things, the three steps, you will use them in a lot of different setups. So what can go wrong? Because it's really three simple steps, and it should be just fluent. Well, first, in the packaging part, you need to find a good package, a package that works in your environment, with a good version, which will not conflict with something else you have. So you also have the dependencies hell, like, okay, I need that version of Vue or Ruby, but it's not packaged for my distribution, or what do I do? And indeed, packaging sucks. The second part, the configuration. So where is the file? How many files are there to configure my service? Oh, the configuration is in the database. Oh, the file is so huge, do I really need to know all the comments and all the things that is in that big file? So, and then you have the third part, starting the service. So the service does not start because there is a bad configuration file, a log file, or some corruption. Or I don't want Puppet to start the service because I'm in a highly available setup, or I don't want the service to be started because it's replicated somewhere else. But today we will talk about configuration. And when I say configuration, I mean files. So we will not speak about packaging and services. We will just speak about files. And how do you change these files, their configuration? Well, you can even change the full configuration. So you have all the files in Puppet, so using the file resource or the concat define. Or you can also have use some Puppet providers like SSH authorized keys or the Augeas providers. And if you do that, if you want to manage the full configuration of your service, you need to also purge the configuration, which means that when something disappears from Puppet or is added from an external tool or something like that, Puppet will just remove it. And it's the same for the conf.d directory that is provided with some services like Apache. In that case, if you want to manage the full configuration with Puppet, you will need to purge the directory. But the other approach is to just change what you need to change, what you want to change the part of the configuration. The first approach is do it with Puppet. So like you just use the SSH authorized key, and then you don't purge it. So if you add a new key by hand on the server, or if you add a new file in the Apache configuration, then it is not removed by Puppet. The second approach is to use the conf.d, but you don't purge it, which means that when you install a new module in your Apache setup, then it will drop a file into the conf.d directory and you don't touch it. You don't remove it with Puppet. Then some people, to manage some configuration, they use exec-set, which is a broken approach for many reasons. I will show you that later. And then you have Augeas. So Augeas is the topic of this talk, but I will first go to three different ways to manage the configurations. The first one, you already know it, is the file resource. So the file resource is probably the most used resource in Puppet. It is built in, it works with a lot of different use cases, with text files, binary files. If you want dynamic content or static content, the file resource can do all of that. You probably know that already, but you can specify if the file needs to be present, the content of the file, the owner, the mode. All of that you can do it using Puppet. So you have different ways to manage the files, because you can even tell to Puppet, okay, here is the content, I want dynamic content, so you use the content parameter with a string, a template, a file. Or you know that your file will not change. And you can reuse the file like this in every environment, everywhere you want, you will just use that file. And in that case, you can use the source parameter, even with some file that come from Puppet or the local file system. And in that case, you have static content. So the file resource has some behavior, like if you pass an array as a source, well, Puppet will choose the first one available. So if you have a variable in that array and the file does not exist, then Puppet will just say, okay, I don't use that one, I will use the other one. If you use a template function in the content, then Puppet will behave differently. It will just take every template and concatenate them. And you will get one file with all the different templates. So in the first case, all the files in the array does not need to exist, but you will only get one of these files into your file. And in the second case, then you will need to have every template defined in your Puppet tree. And there is also something that I see in a lot of different setups, is that when you have a file /foo/var, then you don't need to add the dependency to /foo. Because in that case, Puppet will automatically add the dependency for you. So it will help you to spend some lines. But files, yeah, you can only have one content, so you are limited in that case. So you need to manage the file entirely. You cannot just say, okay, I want to change that part of the file, and then with my other module, I will try to change that part of the module. No, it does not work. And if you want to get more out of that, you have several choices, but then it's more complex. You get custom functions, or you need to use recursive templates. So there is another way to do that, which is the concat module. So the concat module, there is a reference Puppet module from Puppet Labs, which is from 2010, I think. And it will allow you to manage a file part by part. So you will just concatenate different parts of a file into one big file. You have an alternative module from Onyx Point, which has been forked by the Foreman, and now the Foreman is more up to date. The Onyx Point module will, instead of using defines, it will use resources, so custom resources. But that's almost the only difference. Onyx Point is more advanced, but for most of the use case, the concat module is there for you. For example, the newer version of Puppet Labs Apache uses the concat modules from Puppet Labs. So concat, it will take a bunch of snippets, so a bunch of files that you will define using contents, using source, or using a lot of files like resources. And it will do one big file with all of the snippets. And each snippet is a define, so you have the choice to do what you want with each of the snippets. And the final file is a define, so that's what it looks like. So you have the base file, and then you have the fragments. So in that case, you can have contents, but you can have source. So you will be able to just make one big file out of small ones. And so the concat define will set up the destination, so the mode, the owner, the path, and all the fragments will be the part of the files. So that's a nice pattern also, because you have, when you need to configure like a Puppet agent, you will have one part if you want a master, one part for the agent, and one part for the main configuration. So in that case, the concat module is really good. So you have more flexibility. You can choose to have one part of the file only if you have one condition. You can use create resources to create a part of your file. You can mix templates, so you can mix static content and dynamic content, so files, source, and contents. But concat also has some disadvantages. So you need an external Puppet module, one more external Puppet module. And you are still defining the whole file. So if you have multiple SSH agents in multiple versions or multiple operating systems, and you just want to tweak one value there, then you will need to have multiple templates for the different OSs and stuff like that. And also from a performance point of view, well, if you have a lot of difference, parts, then it will really be, performance-wise, it will not be exactly what you expect. Then you can do exec set only if grep. So I will use the set command to modify my file, and I will only do it if I don't find my pattern. Yeah, and there are a lot of use cases for that in GitHub. So I did look for exec set only if grep, language, Puppet, and GitHub, and there are more than 100 code reasons. Okay, but that's broken. Why? First of all, it does not work on Windows. Second, which options do I need to pass to set and grep? Do I need to match the whole line, or do I need to use grep, egrep, or grep? And the exec, you need to use them a few as possible, because each time it will run the onlyif command, and each time it will slow down your Puppet run. Also, when you start using a lot of exec, then you want to have more like subscribe notifications. But if subscribe is failing, then it will not run it the next time. So you should really avoid to use exec in your Puppet modules. And also, you will have problems with regexes or escape characters. So the exec pattern is really a wrong one. Then you have some services that allow you to support conf.d directories. But if you want to change an existing parameter which is in the main config file, and you want to override it, you need to be sure that it will work. And then you need to take care of the order and all of that kind of stuff. And you also need to purge the directory then. But hopefully there is another approach, which is Augeas. So Augeas is a configuration editing tool, which was released in 2007. It was developed by Red Hat, and then the main developer is working for Puppet Labs. But it was an API in C. Just an API in C with some kernel-like tools, but basically it's an API. You have bindings for different languages, including Ruby, but also Python, and every modern language. And it's a configuration editing tool. What does it mean? Because VI also can edit my configuration files. What does it change? Well, it will read the configuration files, and it will understand them. It will not just be a lot of lines, it will turn them into a tree. Like, you can see that like a file system tree. And then you will be able to play with that tree, to remove elements, to add some other elements, and then you will be able to save back the configuration once you will have done all the changes. So let's take an example. The nsswitch.conf file, which is a really simple file. So you have some comments, and then you have some databases and some items into these databases. So what we will do is we will see how Augeas is seeing them. So when you launch the awktool command, you get a prompt. And then you can just do something like ls/files etc nsswitch.conf. And it will just list everything it knows about that file. So it will find the comments and then the different databases. And it will match the order of the file. It does not care about the white lines, it does not care about anything else. It just takes the different databases and the comments. Then I want to see what is in the first database, which was the PassWD database. Oh, I got, okay, the first services is DB and the second services is files. So even if I don't know what is the nsswitch.conf, using that I know that the first column was the databases and the other columns were the services. And that makes sense. So Augeas takes every native format of any configuration file, and it will turn them into a logical tree that it understands. And you can use the words that describe what is in the configuration file instead of just putting spaces to separate the different fields. You get the name of the fields. It does not care about the empty files, and it has auto-completion also. So if you need to work on the command line, it will be very fast. And you can automate that into your scripts if you want. So let's back to my command prompt. Okay, I will add a new database into my first, a new service into my first database. So I will use the command set with /files etc nsswitch.conf, which is the path of my file, and then databases, the first one, and I will add a new service with the index, the last index +1, and I will set that as LDAP. In this case, you always need to put /files before, because you also have a /Augeas, which contains some debugging information and some errors. So if you do a print /Augeas/error, you will see the errors that you have, because Augeas does not do stupid things, unless you tell it to do it. But if you ask him something impossible, then he will just say you, okay, I cannot do that with that file. So let's set that LDAP database, and then save the file. And then Augeas tell me, okay, I saved one file, because you can do modification in multiple files, and then it will just save them into the multiple files that have been changed. So I have now added a database. Let's check that. Okay. So now in my PassWD database, I have LDAP beside PassWD. And look, it did not change the lines into the comments. It just added LDAP where it was needed. Okay, that's nice, but if I do that, if I run that again, then I would just have a second LDAP, and then a third one, and then, because I asked him to just add LDAP services to the PassWD database. So Augeas comes with another mechanism called match. And match will allow you to query the different files. So if I look for anything, any database, any service index, LDAP, LDAP, then it will just tell me that, okay, it's in the first database, it's the third service. Okay, show me what is that first database then. And then I get the whole definition of the database with the name of the database and then the different services. And that's the print command. And each time I still prepend /file/etc/nsswitch.conf. Okay, but actually I don't have LDAP configured, so I will just remove it. And guess what's the command to remove it? Error. So in that case, I've chosen to delete temporarily the index, but I could also use the name, like here I could just say press double goody and here LDAP. But anyway, so okay, I have removed it from the services. Okay, then show me what is the database now. Okay, now there is just DB and files. But at that point, the file is not saved yet. So I could do some other removal, I could change some other value, but well, let's just save it. And again, it saves the files. So that's what Augeas is. It's an API. It can talk XML, any named, Nginx, Apache, and it only changes what is needed to be changed. So if you add some other parameters by hand or with another tools to that file, then it will just not care about them because you did not ask Augeas to change that. And it will also ensure that the syntax is right. Because yeah, when you need to remember, okay, it's the HCP, so I need to add the semicolon, no. So there are so many different formats that you cannot remember all of them. And in that case, having the Augeas tree to manipulate the files is really handy. But how does it work then? How does it know that this is a name.conf file or this is an HTTPD file? Well, Augeas is using what's called lenses. So a lens explains to Augeas, okay, that is a file that describes services and databases, or this is vhost, this is a doc root. So the lenses describe the syntax of the lenses and the logic of them. And it also contains the path of the files. So when I opened the etc nsffish.conf, Augeas already knew that it needed to open the nsffish lens because it's embedded in the lens. And there are like 178 lenses, which to the developer of Augeas is a bit, it's a problem because it means that in the new Linux systems we have so many different syntax for your configuration files, and we cannot just have one, we have like almost 200 of them, and yeah, it's a bit a pity because yeah, look. So all of these different services using different syntaxes, and this is only half of them. So yeah, there is still some work to get some standardization there. And if you need to write Puppet templates for which one of them, then you will get with a lot of different templates, a lot of different modules and stuff like that, and it will become complicated if you need to update one of them. And for services, for things like sysctl, then it's not even possible. I will not put that into a template, for example. And in that case, Augeas is really there for you. But what does a lens look like? That's a lens. It's unreadable. It's really, well, I've never seen that before. Like, this is a comment. Okay, first time of my life that I see that. So lenses, yeah, it's not easy to write, but hopefully there is also already a lot available. And if you need to write one, it's probably you just need to modify one. So what about Puppet then? Well, Puppet loves Augeas. Augeas was already integrated in Puppet 2.7 and even before. And there is Augeas resources, which is the first one into the type reference. And it's integrated. I mean, there is not only the result, but it also supports Pluginsync since Puppet 3, I think, Puppet 3.0.0. And you have a lot of different wrappers, because if you need to remember all the set and all the matches, and if you need to write them on your own for things like sysctl or the core configuration, then you will spend a lot of time for almost nothing, because a lot of people have the same need as you to just modify the sysctl or to just modify the core configuration. So Puppet has a strong Augeas integration. So this is the Augeas resources. There is a difference compared to the command line tool, because in the command line tools, each time you need to add the set /file/, but in the Augeas resources, you can just pass a context parameter, which in that case it means that to every changes command and every onlyif command, it will prepend the context. So in this case, it will look into the fstab file, and it will remove the line only if the line is present. So it means that if you don't have the onlyif, then it will just say, okay, I have an error line because the line is not there. And this is a really simple resource using Augeas. But you can do more complex stuff. As you have seen, the changes is an array. It means that you can have 10 changes. But okay, why would I use that? Well, you can change the web options. You can modify etc host. If you need to add a host, yeah, you have already Puppet resources, but you can also use Augeas as a backend. You can modify some XMLs that's used in Puppet as concat. So applications just like to generate the configuration by themselves using a web UI like Jenkins. If you want to change the Jenkins configuration using Puppet, you will need even to use the Jenkins API, or you can just use Augeas, which understands the XML files directly. And indeed, XML is the first real use case for Augeas. A lot of people that are using Augeas just using for XML, because yeah, when you do XML, if you want to start using execset, then yeah, because you will become crazy after 2 days. So it supports Pluginsync. What does that mean? It means that if you put your lenses into lib Augeas Lenses, then it will be in the path of Augeas. So Puppet uses the Ruby implementation of Augeas, and it will add a valid Puppet lib Augeas Lenses to the path. So if you have a custom lens, or if you want to use a lens from another version of Augeas, you can just put that in that directory, and with the Pluginsync magic, it will just be available. And then in the Augeas resources, you have the lens parameter, which means that, for example, for the XML, it's not possible to have the path of every possible XML into the lens file. And so what you usually do is you just use the lens and you put xml.lns to that resource, and then Augeas will just consider that as an XML. So this is an example which comes from the type resources, the documentation of Puppet, which will use the lens parameter. So it will say, okay, we'll consider that as a gboss configuration file, and I will just set the gboss IP into the gboss.as.conf, to that IP address, and I will set the Java home also. So that's an example of Augeas in real life. And in that case, it's trivial because we are only setting variables. But yeah, you can set variables, you can remove them, you can move them, you can clear them, because it's really a tree. So you can move the parameters, you can insert a parameter before another, and you have still a bunch of other comments. And you have that's for the setting, that's for changing, but you can also query the configuration files, like I did with the match. And you have match, and you have get. So if you just want to know, okay, what is the first database in the nssh.conf, you can just use get, and you can do that in the onlyif of the Augeas resource. Okay, still, but it's still complicated to do match, get of complex queries. Okay, then Augeas providers is for you. Augeas providers, which is now in version 2.0, it's a bunch of different resources that use the Augeas bindings, the Ruby bindings, to provide native resources to your Puppet tree. What they did in the version 2 is splitting Augeas provider into different modules that you can find on the approach. So if you just want to use it for the kernel parameters, then you just need to get the module for the kernel parameters, and you don't pollute your Puppet with a lot of custom resources you don't need. So this is an example of a native resource provided by the Augeas providers. In that case, it will just add a special environment into the Apache configuration with value /2/bin. Another parameter, if I want to add the quiet option to the kernel parameters, which is a file that's generated when you update the kernel. So in that case, Augeas is really helpful. So it will add the quiet, a parameter in the boot mode normal of the kernel when the web configuration is changed. And you can remove or just add a new parameter. And if the parameter is already there, we will not change it. And it also means that when you will install a new kernel, it will just query the file again and see, okay, I need to add the quiet parameter there. One last thing about Augeas is that it also supports MCollective in both ways, so you can use it to discover the nodes. Like, okay, I want to run that command where the user with UID 500 is John. Or if I want to check, okay, what can John do in the sudoers files? And you can do that even if you are not configuring the sudoers file using Puppet, which you should do, and I hope you all do. But you can query a lot of different configurations files using Augeas. And if you want also to check things like, okay, the concat, but you know that you have some concat that has been set up by hand by some people, and you want to know, okay, what's happening at that time? So my network is just fully occupied. Okay, you can just check in the concat using MCollective, and in one command, you can just get all your answers. So, Augeas is nice, but it has some disadvantages. So the first of all, if you want to do an advanced usage, you will need to learn. But my guess is that if you learn Augeas once, then you can modify like 200 different configuration files. So, yeah. There is a library to install, so when you build the Puppet RPM, if you do it, you can switch if you want or don't want Augeas. I don't remember if Puppet Labs is shipping it with Augeas. And if you need to write lenses, then yeah, it's gonna be hard. But you probably only need to modify one that already exists. And you need good Puppet modules. What does that mean? It means that if you decide that you have a Puppet module that will change your CTL, and that you have a second Puppet module that do the same for the same parameter but with a different value, then they will just fight. And at each Puppet run you will have your cctl.conf file that will be changed. It's the same for any other file. So if you have a conflict in Puppet because you try to define twice etc foo.bar, then Puppet will just complain, okay, I have a duplicate resource definition. But with Augeas, it will not be the case. It will just modify and modify again the file. So you need more than ever to isolate the functionality in your Puppet module, so you will also be able to reuse them. And things like cctl should belong to a profile or something like that, but not to the configuration of your service. Okay, that was the downside, but there are also a lot of benefits. Like, Augeas is mature, it's not a new tool, it's from 2007, it's 7 years old now, so it will not change the commands in the files. So it's not like a template that will just strip out all the comments. No, if you want to review the file after that, you can just also still have the comments. It can also add some comments. So if you want, you can add new comments into your NSS.conf to explain why you did set up that LDAP options. It fails. Well, only if it's needed, but if you try to do something really crazy with the configuration tree of your file, it will just say no. It will just say, this is not what you want to do in that file because it's not possible. It's not in the structure. It only changes what is needed. So I've already explained that. And you have a lot of different lenses available. So with one tool, you modify all of your different services. I will just say a final note. So Augeas is, sorry? Oh, yeah, you have the Puppet integration and the helpers that I have spoken about, also in the advantages of using Augeas. So final note. So most of the time, the file resource are the way to go. If you can use file or concat, just do it. But if you have an application that will write the file by itself, or that you can change using an external tool that is not Puppet, and that you don't want just to screw up the changes on that file each time you're in Puppet, then you can just use Augeas. If you want to create a new pipelines into your Jenkins, or if you want to manage some parameters on some jobs using Puppet, you can just do it using Augeas, and you don't need to put the whole Jenkins configurations file into version control, because it will just break things up at each update, or anyone will click on a button, it will change a small thing in the XML, and then the template will just restart Puppet again. So in that kind of situations, Augeas will really help you to just get the parameter you want to manageable without erasing the entire file each time. So if you want to learn more, you have Augeas.net, the provider's website, and or obviously the documentation of Puppet. So thank you. If you have any question. Yes?
I've met configuration files where there's a default that's not explicitly set, and then a comment is override. Is this any help with that sort of situation, or does everything have to be without? Will you recognise that as a variable, or recognise it as a comment?
If you recognize it, the question is if I have commented a variable. In that case, then Augeas will just add a new line with the real. It will not remove your comment.
But
so if you have
it won't recognise it as a variable.
It will not recognize it as a variable, no. But if you want, you can remove that comment using Augeas also.
But how do you handle the default that's not explicitly set? Like, for instance, SSH coming through logging. There's a default that is not allowed, and you said yes, if you do want to allow. But how do you know that variable is there in the file?
So, when you will set the permit for plugin in the SSH, then it will just see if it is already there. In that case, it will change it, and if it's not there, it will just add it. And that's all. So.
No, but it's not in the file. There is a default that it has a value.
Yeah.
How do you know what that is?
Augeas does not know that. So you will need to specify that. And it makes sense because the default may change from one operating system from another operating system. So
if you want to control the configuration file with defaults, you have to know the defaults and put them in explicitly.
Yeah, indeed. Yes?
Is it like a copy of the existing file before it changes?
I think you have an option to make a backup of the files, yes. I don't know if it's in the Augeas resource, but you can definitely do it. And I think you also have, well, if you don't save it, it's also just a dry run, so you can exit it at any moment. Yes?
What language do you use for writing the lens?
Sorry?
What language do you use for writing the lens?
To write what?
Lens.
It's a specific language. It's an Augeas language, like I showed it. You can just see the examples on GitHub, but it's a specific language. Yes?
Is it fully supported on Windows?
I think so, yes. Yeah, I think it's supported in Windows because of the Ruby bindings, so. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.